So, dear audience, welcome to Rauta's interviews over Zoom. What we have here is from Sweden. We have a band of two, not one bedroom artist, but two bedroom black metal artists. Kidding aside, these two are from Sweden playing what could be called as second wave black metal. I think that's somewhat correct. Do you agree, guys?
We think it's more extreme metal.
I don't know.
with black metal influence. But yeah, it's closer to second wave than modern black metal, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's start by explaining who are you guys? You can just do it in whatever order. What are your instruments and roles in the band?
Yeah, I'm Adam. I play guitar. I compose. I do the mixing, the mastering. We record in my studio, in my house.
And you also take care of all the contacts.
Yeah, the contacts and economy.
And I'm Lars, and I'm singer. And I write all the lyrics, and I play the bass, and also writing the bass.
And you're also responsible for arranging your vocals and backing vocals.
Yeah, for sure. And
you also produce with me.
Yeah,
so it's definitely a two-man project, compositionally, I would say.
All right. Let's talk about the name. For people who don't understand Swedish at all, this could be a kind of a prank name, like Åskog. But obviously we know it's not pronounced like that. Correct how much I'm wrong here. U refers to river? No?
A small river.
Small river, okay. And skog is forest, right?
Yeah.
So you have a name basically referring to part of nature. How did you end up using such a name for the band?
We went through a lot of names, mostly in English, because we wanted to start a new project we worked together on another band, and we didn't want to continue with that band, and we wanted to have a fresh name, new music. We went through so many names, Black something, Death something.
Yeah, and like
everything's taken.
Well, for like 2 years ago, I bought a house in the forest, and the area that it's in, or my house, my address is called Åskogsbråten.
Okay.
The area is called Åskog.
All right, so it's basically referring to place where you actually live.
Yeah, I will not live. It's a summer place, but yeah.
Yeah, but okay, you spend time there and get to relax and all that stuff. Now, many people think that, or consider, which is kind of true, that the Nordic countries are very beautiful in nature, and that has been inspiring many black metal and extreme metal bands for decades now. I mean, the mountains, the lakes, the sea, the whatever. I mean, it's all there. What is your relationship to nature? Why it is nature that keeps inspiring you so much then?
We decided when we wanted to think about a sort of theme for the band, where we would go. And I always say, write about what you know, write about what you know best. And because you were going to do the lyrics.
Yeah, I have a big interest in nature, and I cut my own trees and so forth. So that's a fitting theme, something I...
And Lars has never had a girlfriend, so there was no point writing about sex and relationships.
Yeah.
I think black metal traditionally, like you said, it's organic. We like organic stuff. And of course, throughout the years from the 90s, it's been taken in all directions, industrial, war. And they're all cliches now, where we don't pretend that we're original. We don't pretend that we're doing something new, but we're doing something that we like. We feel that we can do in a good way. And Lars is particularly interested in forestry and stuff like that. So we thought, why not? We could see how it went. I don't think we'll continue like exclusively being a nature-based band. We'll probably move. We've talked about future ideas for lyrics and themes, and we probably would take lyrics through the ages, maybe start organically and build up through humanity. So we have different ideas, but we won't be exclusively writing about trees and bushes.
Why not? But also, you have this kind of cover image, which is also quite nature related. It's more brutal side of the nature, but nevertheless nature related. How did you end up using this cover image for the album?
Oh, it's in the lyrics foremost. The lyrics has a lot of I sing about, for instance, the raven a lot. And the raven is a symbol for death. So the raven on the picture is eating from the werewolf. And it symbols his death, that death is coming to take his soul or something. And in the lyrics we also have about the werewolf, the song Måne is about a transformation from human to werewolf to human. So the picture connects very much with those two songs, Korp and Måne, I would say.
The album's loosely themed, so there's ideas that reoccur and ideas that interconnect, but it isn't a concept. We weren't going to have any supernatural elements, but Måne became supernatural because obviously werewolves don't exist. So,
are you sure?
Pretty sure. So we had actually a grander idea for the cover. We had another artist who was going to do the cover, and we wanted to have a double spread cover. So we had a lot of detail. And the artist she jumped from the project and disappeared. So we found another artist, but he said, I can do it, but for the price that I take, we need to sort of condense the cover. And he doesn't believe in these big grand covers. I like these Emperor style covers in the Nightside Eclipse, where you can really sit and look and examine all the details. But we're a new band. We don't have several thousand euros to spend on artwork. So I think we got a good cover.
Yeah,
it's neat cover though. Yeah.
So I'm very happy with the cover. And it ties in the themes, and it does its job.
You mentioned being a new band. That is, you're not new kids off the block. That is, you have a previous history with previous bands, which then again led you to this point. But can we see a little bit of a light into your history? What led you here? What you guys were doing before Åskog? What kind of bands we should know about?
I grew up in the UK. I moved to Scotland in '88. That's when I started listening to extreme music. I started with, probably like everybody else, Maiden, Wasp, and then the bands get heavier and heavier, Metallica, Megadeth, and then suddenly you get into death metal and then black metal. And I was quite influenced by the ambient tracks in the Burzum albums. It's really early stuff I wasn't that into. But I think it's the third album where he's got this beautiful ambient track at the end. I just got this amazing feeling from it. I wanted to do something like that myself. So I started a project called Murdrick, and I made an ambient album. And then
that's like 2000s.
Yeah, 99, I think it was.
Okay.
And then I sort of, life got in the way. I moved to Europe. I moved to Holland and then moved to Sweden. And I kind of wanted to play death metal, and I thought the way death metal was going, it was becoming so complicated and everything was so extreme. It was just fast, and how many notes per second you can play. And I thought there's nothing I can do in death metal that contributes in any way, something that I would think would help. Anything that I could do that would be good compared to what people were doing, in that time. So I stopped playing music, and I kind of sat at home and wrote riffs, and I played guitar and recorded, and I didn't do anything. I never had a singer, I never had a drummer. And then I resurrected Murdrick after I played half a year in Lord Belial as a session bass player. And I kind of got the bug for music, and I kind of learned a lot from being in Lord Belial. Something I've always struggled with musically is you sit and you want to do something completely unique, and you want to do something new, and you want it to be technical and skillful. But I learned in Lord Belial that you can use the same notes all the time, just in another order, and still make really good music. So I learned from there to sort of simplify and to try and write songs instead of write complicated parts. So I rebooted the band, and I couldn't think of a name, so I took the name Murdrick. And I knew it was a risk, because in Swedish, if you split the word into two, you get mör and drick, which means wall and drink. So it's kind of really ridiculous. And a lot of people couldn't really see beyond that. Whereas in English, it was a bit more mystical and fantastic, even though I had no idea that this word would be...
Any similarity to Marduk.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we evolved into Åskog, is to get away from that. So yeah, that's basically my band history, other than a few other bands I've played with that don't really have any significance to what I'm doing.
What about you, Lars? How did you end up doing black metal in the first place?
Oh, I don't know. At a pretty early age, I was introduced to, not by my father, my stepfather. He had a great interest in rock music, blues, like Pink Floyd, and weird music. So I got early on introduced to that. And one of the earliest harder bands I really got to listen to is Pretty Maids, a heavy metal band. And I was like 10 years old, I think, there, when I got more into metal, and it got extremer and extremer.
In where we live, there's there's a lot of musicians in this area, so everyone's played with each other. We've all played with the same people, but we've never played together at the same time.
No,
we've even been in the same bands, but never at the same time.
No, there is a lot of metal around here.
Yeah.
And 6th, 7th grade, I think, I started my first band, and the friends I had there was also into black metal. So I think
we both felt we'd never really done anything significant, where we really tried to sort of release something properly, didn't we?
No.
Because you haven't really done anything significant, but you've been active, done a lot.
Yeah, I've been active, like my own music on YouTube or whatever. And the biggest band I played it before Murdrick and Åskog probably is Extirpated. It's an extreme death metal slam band or something. So no, so the extreme has I guess with my friends and the background that my stepfather gave me, gave me the opportunity to really listen to a lot of music. So I don't listen only to black metal, death metal, such a stuff. It's Beatles, it's pop music. Everything gets me inspired, really.
One could even make the argument that when you listen to music beyond metal, you don't necessarily copy so much these already existing ideas, but rather go for more original style, because there's so many bands which seem to be even covering from bands that sound kind of the same and basically as such don't really add anything of value, create anything new as such to the music scene. And you mentioned now these different styles, blues, rock, pop music, whatever. How do you think it reflects on your own songwriting or lyrics writing when you're listening to music beyond metal?
I listen to also other stuff. I like some classical. I've listened to Björk. I've listened to hip hop in the 80s because that music in that time, 87, 88, when I was 11 years old, that was heavy compared to what was in the charts and what you saw on TV. So I always had this heaviness that I needed from music, maybe more rhythmical, maybe a little bit more staccato. But I've never enjoyed pop music. Lots and lots of melodies and big choruses. So for me, if you look at any band, you look at all bands like Maiden, Wasp. If you play guitar, you begin to see patterns. You begin to see where their influences came from. And I think you mentioned in your review that it's a very typical Scandinavian sound, but I'm not Scandinavian. I've been here 20 years nearly, so maybe it plays a part. But I think what's key is I grew up listening to maybe the same bands that a lot of Swedish bands listen to, that were in their day pioneers of music, Dissection, bands like At the Gates. They all had something in common, and I think that was where their roots came from. So I think it progressively comes through the music even today. So if you analyze a bit of Wasp or Megadeth, you see that they're quite blues influenced in their riffs. Even some Slayer songs have got exactly the same fingering as Megadeth songs. And it kind of evolves. I think originality is always an overrated concept because I don't think anything's truly original. As soon as you become a genre, if you're in a genre or a subgenre, it means that you've got to sound similar to something that's already been. So it's very, very difficult to come up with new stuff. But we spoke about this the other day when we were out walking. Is that
if something is totally new?
Yeah, people don't accept it.
No. Exactly.
That is something I want to jump into because I've noticed when I get these review albums, I'm always on the fence. Like when a band is really, really original, it ends most of the time sounding quite crappy. If that is like a means to an end to do just like we go for this really original style for the sake of it. It becomes like this, like a joke, which doesn't really make you laugh. It is like, okay, so you break these weird patterns and you do some, goofy way of singing. Well, certainly you sound original, but that doesn't mean most people want to listen to it. And on the other side of the fence is obviously this thing that when you just copy paste basically the basic ideas, you end up creating nothing new, and you end up sounding like a cover band. I think personally, anyway, as a review guy and a music fan, that it is this very, very thin line, the kind of a top of the fence where the best material comes. And it's, at least in my opinion, it seems like what you were saying is exactly very, very true, that originality as such is overrated because it ends up doing this kind of boring music, or horrible music, maybe more so. But the thing is, what I'm wanting to ask is like, how do you fight against it? How do you fight against being yet another Swedish melodic black metal or extreme metal band, and yet at the same time still creating something new? What is your magic? Or is it just something that it happens if it happens?
I just want to go back a little bit before I answer that, because I think it's also very important to understand that we've come full circle with music. In the 70s, you had the Sabbath rock, and then you had maybe Deep Purple, and then you had bands like Judas Priest, then you had Maiden, then you had Wasp, then you had, Skid Row, Motley Crue, Megadeth, Metallica. In that time frame, everything was slightly new. There was always a new genre. Then you had thrash metal in the 80s. In 90s, we had Swedish death metal. We had Bathory. It progressed. Black metal came. Symphonic black metal came. Everything had a place in a sort of small time frame, 2 or 3, 4 years. But now we don't have that. There is no genre anymore where we say, 2010, that was blah, blah, blah style. 2015, that was blah, blah, blah style.
Maybe gent.
But yeah, everyone now is making music that they enjoy. So there's new thrash bands, there's new black metal bands, there's new death metal bands, there's new jazz death metal bands. Everything has come full circle. So what do we do to combat this? Well, first of all, we write music that we want to listen to. We're not writing for any audience. We're not writing for reviewers to give us 10 out of 10. We're not writing for people to say, you're the best ever. We love sitting in the studio and being creative. We don't need to earn money from it. We don't have an audience that we have to appease. So if we write a song and we think it's good, then we're happy.
Basically, we want chills from our own music.
Yeah. And personally, when I listen to my music, I go through the same process as anybody else who listens to our music, and that's, you get to know it, you get bored of it. Sometimes you go out and you feel amazingly pumped by 1 or 2 songs. Your favorite song changes from week to week. And then you kind of, after a few months, you forget about it. And you move on to the next thing. And that's what being an artist is. It's about fulfilling a selfish desire for creativity. But at the same time, we don't want to be boring people. We don't want to be writing, we're not looking to break down boundaries and be the next big band. As long as we're happy with what we're writing and think it's good and listen to it, and that we can stand by it and say that we've done it in an honest way, that's what we aim to do. If that's original or not original, that's for anybody else to decide. I don't personally think we're original, but I don't think...
No, a little different maybe. But...
Yeah, I don't think we sound like every other band. And I definitely don't think we have one of those albums where you put track 1 on, you skip through to track 3, you skip to track 5 and to track 10, and it sounds like you've listened to the same song for 40, 50 minutes. I definitely think we have variety.
No, every song on this album, I think, has very much character, personality.
Yeah.
It is its own thing, yeah.
And I think I've always written that way. I find it very difficult to write in a very consistent way where I have a formula or a piece, a puzzle to fit. On previous albums, we've had songs that maybe shouldn't have been there. But with this album, I think we've succeeded in mixing up the styles, but also having what's the word? Yeah, an album that works together. All the songs work together. At least I think so.
You mean dynamically?
Well, yeah. I mean that there's no song that you say, "Oh, what the hell is that song doing on the album?"
Yeah. I must say that one of the things which I really enjoyed on the album is that it's consistent and it's solid in a way that there is no like, what the fuck is this one? Like, why did you want to include a ballad or industrial song? And don't get me wrong, there are albums, like you mentioned, the Burzum's Philosophem, which has this ambient track, which isn't really the same as the previous ones. Well, kind of, but still different. But sometimes, bands go really overboard it, and it's more like giving this feeling that, okay, this band is so much pushing their own ideas, like, because we like it, we think it's going to be included, even though for the bigger picture, it might not make so much sense. But I think your album is very consistent in style, and it's like Lars said, it's dynamic enough, to have this feeling that it's not repeating itself, but still everything fits together. And I could imagine that even if you change the order of the songs for, say, live purposes, and it could be, making sense, which is, I guess, a key element, at least for bands making live. Which I guess leads me to the next question. Åskog and live, will that happen, and how?
Probably not.
No, we aren't that interested in that. We like to be creative in the studio, but who knows what happens in future.
We're pretty lazy. We don't like being in a rehearsal room every weekend. We've tried it. We've tried being in a band, and you have this constant revolving door of musicians that come and play for a month, and then they go and join another band, and they hop from band to band. And because they're not as creative as we are, or don't have an investment in the band, they don't have the commitment. Usually it's a problem with drummers because, with drummers, you have to have high technical skill, be able to play fast, be able to play blast beats, which we do have. But there's so few drummers in this area.
We actually had one live show with Murdrick a couple of years ago, but after that we split up. So I don't think we don't really have the energy for it, because we do like playing. It's one of the best feelings ever, but there's just so much crap around playing. You have to rehearse constantly. You have to build up skills. Everyone in the band has to be on the same skill level, on the same page. I think all that holding us two back, at least. Nobody
pays for gigs. You've got to support yourself. You've got to get to the gig. You've got to pay for an overnight hotel or whatever. When you're at the gigs, everyone wants to be the last band because they know that if they're the first band, there's going to be no audience. It's just not for me anymore. It was better when I played with Lord Belial. Everything was done. I just had to turn up and sit in the band. That was really good. But doing it ourselves, no, I don't think so. The reward is so low.
I get you.
Yeah, and from my experience, you play 10 gigs and 5 of them will be great and 5 of them will be shit, and those 5 you just wonder what the fuck are we doing.
Yeah, it's just repetition.
Yeah. We'd love to play live if it was that easy. If it was just turn up with the gear, set up, play live, go home. Yeah, that would be great, but it isn't. It's a lot of work. It's also one of those things that irritate me with the music business is people say, "Oh, you've got an album, you should give it away and play and sell them and play live and make your money live." It's like, why do we have to work twice to make money in the band or cover costs? If you play live, it's a complete money pit. You have to be prepared to spend hundreds of euros a month.
Yeah,
more than that. I was offered. I got emails with our previous band if we wanted to go on tour. I won't mention which band, but it said like, pay 5,000 euros, you can be on our tour bus for a week and play with that band for a week. But you have to pay your own airfares to get to the first country. They just want you to pay to play, and they want you to pay their bill for their touring. And you know, if I wanted to do this band as a professional job, okay, maybe that investment is worth it, but I don't think so. I don't think there is money in extreme music, regardless. But no, we just want to be creative. Yeah.
So we talked about your live presence and the realities of things, and these are something that most people don't even understand. People who have been playing in the bands usually know the story. You know, you have to do these gigs and tours in order to promote your band, and as such, sell merchandise, sell CDs, and everything seems to revolve about money. But that is one thing where black metal has always been a little bit different, and other extreme metal bands as well. Like, who wants to wonder about money? Who wants to care about money when you can actually put your effort into creativity? Which brings me to my question to you. How much do you think money and power corrupts metal music versus other styles which are maybe more dependent on money and fame?
Question for you.
Really easy question.
I could probably talk all day about this. I've worked for a magazine, so I've seen firsthand the kind of stuff that comes into a magazine. They get 1,000 CDs a month from record labels, from private individuals, and a magazine requires advertising to support itself. They don't survive on the cover price. They need to be able to. They
need to write about the most popular thing.
Need to pay their writers. They have a cover CD, and this isn't just the band, the magazine I wrote for. It's all magazines. You pay to be on the cover CD. Other magazines, from a band perspective, are ruthless. They won't feature you unless you buy advertising. So you'll get from larger magazines, you'll get an email that says, if you pay 500 euros, you'll get a track on the CD. You'll get a half-page review. You'll get a half-page interview and a guaranteed review. If you pay 800 euros, you'll get blah, blah, blah. Money is definitely important for the people who are running the industry, which is understandable, because if you're having a business, businesses cost money. Metalheads are extremely poor and don't really understand the business side of the music. I think everything is done on passion, and that somehow passion supports itself. But someone's paying for it. It doesn't matter what it is. We keep our costs low because we do as much as we can ourselves. We record ourselves, we mix ourselves. We don't have studio costs.
Even the artwork in some form.
Yeah,
the lyric videos. I did that.
So we tried to keep everything as low as possible. But this album, even keeping it low has cost us and we're not talking about the CD press or the vinyl press or the cassette tapes, but we're up in, 1,500 euros just to make it work. And that's not an extreme amount of money. That's pretty small amount of money in the scheme of an album production. A big band will probably have a production cost of 80,000 euros. But that money has to come in. It has to come back. This isn't... We talked that it's a creative project for us, but this is not a vanity project. I am not willing to create music and put it out to the public and have people, if they want to listen to it and enjoy it, I want them to pay for it. I want them to support us, even if it's just buying a digital download for a few euros. I want that back because it costs us. It costs us a lot of money that we work for in our normal day-to-day jobs. If you don't like what we do, that's fine. I don't expect money for nothing. We don't do Patreons. We don't do crowdfunding. We never ask for any money in advance. We always put the product out, and the people will decide if it's worth paying for. So from that perspective, we put our money where our mouths are. We put everything up front. The public decide if they want to support us, and pretty much that makes us decide if we do another album and release it, because I don't want to spend several thousand euros and have that cost me and it doesn't come back to me somehow. I'm perfectly fine with losing a little bit of money as a hobby expense.
But the goal is to get some money back. Yeah,
but we're happy to break even. If we could bring in more money to the band, we could have much better production. Yeah, we could do much better things, but at this level, we don't get the income, so we have to keep everything on a small scale. Corruption. I don't know about corruption because I don't know so much about the music business. But what I do know about the music business is it's absolutely cutthroat. I know lots of bands that have been in record deals that have lost their rights to their catalog because they're so desperate to get a CD out that they've written away their rights, and they're not coming back. We will never ever sell our music. We will license our music. We will let people release it, but we'll never ever give someone our music and profit from it forever. When we always give a license deal. So with our labels, they have a license, and I give a fair license. I say, you've got 3 or 4 years to get your money back on the CD press or the vinyl press, and I will not let anybody else press the music. I don't look to maximize our income at other people's expenses. So we always license our material. But yeah, we talked previously there about paying to get on tours, paying for festivals. A lot of people don't know this, but if you're a small band and you're on a festival, that they want money for the backline, and your reward is a ticket to the festival, and you still have to pay your hotels, you still have to pay your food. It's not for free. Nothing is for free. You're not getting paid.
The win is you get your name out.
Yeah. And you've probably read this. You've probably interviewed hundreds of people that say the same thing. Is we can't live on the promise of publicity. If you do this, it's good publicity. Yes, it's good publicity to a point, but it doesn't pay the bills. So this is also why we do things the way we do them. We scale down so that we don't have costs. The risk as an investment is low. If we don't make our money back, then it's fine, because we don't feel that we're going to deprive our families or whatever, because we've thrown some money at the band. But I know people that spend thousands trying to get their band out. And they pump money into it and they get nothing back. And I think we're much smarter. I think we do pretty well for the budget. Actually, yeah.
Now that I think about it, I think this is a really, really important topic that you're talking about this, because for me it seems like so many bands, especially the bigger ones, are giving out an idea of kind of illusion, like we're just playing music, we are rock and roll stars, and nobody wants to touch the subject of money because it's kind of a taboo. Like you mentioned, you have to pay for participating and, as a warm-up slot. That is something that goes a little bit around, but nobody basically mentions that you have to pay for your own flights or festival places, slots or whatever. And people don't even realize that even if you have home studio, because that's exactly the same situation where it seems that you guys have, we have two guys in the garage studio. Basically everything is free except for the electricity and all that stuff, but what people don't take into account that instruments break down, your recording devices break down, or you need some upgrades and stuff like that. So everything basically costs money, but people are like, but passion, it creates power and man, you don't bring food to your table, even if it's just a hobby. So to a certain degree, I totally get what you mean. The point is that yes, everybody is willing to, spend some money because it's a hobby. It kind of makes sense. But then you have this point where too much is just too much. And I think you're making indeed smart moves. But I mean, what would be your advice to bands? You already said some points like don't do this or no, you shouldn't do that. But if you could sum up the ideas, what a new band shouldn't do in terms of being part of the music industry as a new band, what kind of tip would you give to newbies of the scene?
Definitely calculate your what you're willing to put into a band and what you expect to get back, and be brutally honest about that, because every time we release an album, I'm extremely pessimistic. I'm sort of, I have a cutoff where I think if I can get this back, then it's fine. And usually we break even, or, we get a little bit more than it cost us. So I think the main advice is be interested in the economy, because if you're not, you're just going to throw money down the drain.
They're going to fuck you over.
Yeah, and be also be confident about your product. Don't give it away. Don't be so desperate to get a CD out that you're going to write off your rights forever. A CD you can release yourself for a few €100 now. And I think if you're not in your early 20s, forget about it as a career almost, because it's much easier working for a living and doing it for fun. Also think about if you're in a band and you want to do it as a career, you've really got to have that burning desire to be a musician on stage, because it is not an easy job. And if you look at it from an hourly salary, it's the worst paying job you'll ever have in your life. So be honest about what you want. And I think also as a band, if you're 5 people and you're putting money into a band, write everything down, write agreements, because one of these guys is going to leave at some point, and then there's going to be an argument. Oh, I paid this and that, and I want this back. And you've got to have agreements. Also agreements about what you're writing and what the splits are and who's doing the work. And don't just think about the music, think about the entire economy of the band. We have a very good split, because on the surface of it, it sounds like I do a lot. I do the economy, I do the mixing, I do to a certain amount, the recording, and I compose.
You have contact with all the people.
Yeah, and I do all the emails. I keep track of all the figures. I pay out Lars when the money comes in. But we split everything 50-50. He puts in exactly 50% of the costs, and he does more work that I don't have to do. So he does more visual presentation on YouTube, creating artworks or videos. So he does a lot more creative side that I really don't have the time for, that I would normally do otherwise. But so I think hourly we probably do almost as much work, because working on a lyric video, even if it's a small animation video, it takes like a week.
It depends.
Yeah. So he's sitting there behind a computer, a lot of hours.
Just trying shit out.
So I think you've got to have an equal division of labor among your band as well if you want to succeed, because nobody wants to be doing all the work and but I write all the songs. I've read, I don't follow this, but I've read like the Batushka arguments, or however you pronounce their band, about the creative person and the business person, and how the creative person's been fucked by the business person. But, I don't know any of the details, but I can imagine that, with a lot of creative types, they just want to shut their eyes to the business side. And the stuff around the creative side is 90% harder work than actually writing the music. So the whole idea of being in a band isn't just about jamming some songs and recording them and putting them out. It's so much work. We finished this album in the end of December, and our release date is on Wednesday, or the 12th of May. And I've been working constantly. So I'm just hoping that once it's released, I can relax a bit. But, the music was done months and months ago. The recording was done months ago. But the energy in keeping the band going and doing interviews, writing emails, it's much, much harder work than the actual creative process. So I don't think people don't understand this either. When you want to give your album away for free, because that's what you're supposed to do, because people don't buy music, try to understand that this isn't, if I calculate the number of hours Lars and I have worked on this project creatively and with everything around it, we probably get something like 10 cents an hour, if that. Probably not even that much.
You're very positive if you think you get that much.
Yeah, probably.
Seriously, I want to add my own comment to that, because being played in the bands, and I totally get what you mean. And this is also in addition to the money thing, it's one of those things that bands don't emphasize enough, like how much energy you put throughout the years just to get that 40 minutes out. And people don't necessarily even understand that once an album is out, it could be years and years old. And the artists might even be, fed up talking about it, because for them, it's like the last summer thing, and the focus is, the focus is on the future, like what is happening right now. But obviously promoting something and creating something are two different things. So it's like at least two different timelines, which are like on the top of each other. And band members are like, hey, fans are like, hey, bring us the money, do those gigs. Like, why are you complaining? Like, what the fuck? So it gets so much complicated, and people only see this tip of the iceberg. I think actually how to sum up the whole idea of music industry and why it is so fucked is that they should watch the movie Titanic or read the historical article. I mean, I'm talking about the tip of the iceberg versus what lies behind the surface or underneath the surface. But anyway,
I think it's fascinating with any creative industry. If you're an actor or a musician, people romanticize about your work. If you're what's his face from Monty Python, everyone talks about Fawlty Towers from the 70s as if that's still a current thing in his life. That took him 6 months of work in 1974, and people still talk about that as if it's his thing. It's the same with albums. People talk about classic albums and, you did this and you did that, and it was such a great thing. And how do you feel now? And it's like, well, that was like 15 albums ago. We're always moving forward, but people are always stuck in a sort of fantasy time of nostalgia and something that gives them positive feelings even today, which is understandable, but it has no relevance to the artist anymore.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Swedish atmosphere, and especially I want to hear from Lars, like because Sweden is always seen like this big bowl of creativity, especially in metal music, but also pop music and basically all kinds of music. Sweden seems to be tapping the vein. Since you are, as far as I could understand, you have been born in Sweden, you've been living there, I guess most of or all your life. What do you think is the secret in being a Swedish musician?
Oh,
I know it's not an easy question, but how do you feel? Because it seems like no matter what genre of metal music we're talking about, there are always good bands, and that is not something that we can say about just any country in the world.
I have an answer if he can't come up with one.
I have no clue, but no, I have no clue why just Sweden would bloom in.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
It's because you don't pay for your rehearsal space.
Yeah.
In Sweden, they have a system where you get government money to support hobbies.
Yeah, so it's really easy to get a rehearsal room with your friends and just be creative.
I think that's why, because everyone can get this room. When I grew up in Britain, we'd have to pay, I think it was like £35, and this was in the year 2000 for a 3-hour slot in a rehearsal room, and we had to use the gear that was there or bring our own stuff. But in Sweden, you get a room, you fill it with all your things, and you get to use that, and you don't pay.
There is even basic amplifiers and drum sets in those rehearsal rooms. So it's a very good way to be creative at a young age. And you get paid for it.
It's madness because in Sweden there's 9 million people in population, but per head there's so many black and death metal bands. But it isn't just black and death metal bands. People even in my age, you don't have to be young. If you've got a creative ambition, you'll be able to get some kind of financial support for it. We don't actually use it anymore because we can't be bothered. But we could potentially earn a little bit of money, maybe €50 a month, using that system. But we don't do it anymore because we want to do it on our time frame. You have to register the hours and the dates that you play. But usually that pays for a rehearsal room. But if you don't have a rehearsal room, you can actually get paid to do something at home.
All right. Yeah. How is the Swedish scene, metal scene? Because, people, doesn't matter whether we're talking about death metal, black metal, or kind of a more melodic metal, or even classic heavy metal style or retro kind of a stuff. It seems like there are bands and band members coming up all the time, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and so forth. And it seems like Sweden, in terms of the population, not so much, but land space, quite a lot in terms of how European countries are. So people are quite spread across, but obviously we have places like Stockholm and Gothenburg where there are more bands, per, I guess, area. How do you feel these different scenes happening in Sweden? Are you like creating stuff like festivals, events, zines and stuff like that together? Or is it just kind of a random how things happen?
It's difficult to talk for other locations, but where we live, we have a rock bar. They've been around since 2006 or 2008.
They're taking bands all the time.
Yeah, but they do a lot, don't they? They do festivals and they do
they have gigs. One festival at the same time. Yeah.
And they're pretty good to the bands, because if you're a completely new band, you might get a gig, but you'll not get paid, but you'll get food and a few drinks. But if you're a more established act, locally or you're going to bring in a few people, they'll actually pay. And they even bring in bands from. They've had people like Chris Holmes play there, and they all sorts of musicians. That I think that they probably cost them money in the end because their fees are too high, and the amount of public that come in isn't a lot. It's the venue supports maybe 50, 60 people by the stage. But yeah, it's variable because in Gothenburg you can go to a gig and there'll be no people, but you can go to another gig and there'll be 100 people. If you go to a big band gig, Marduk or Dark Funeral, that'll be sold out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the rock bars are a huge thing. I agree on that. And also, I think the thing we were talking about before, Studiefrämjandet, föreningar, what's called in English.
It's like, I can't think of the word. I don't know.
Yeah, we got a dead end here.
Yeah.
So what about society and media? How do they react to metal? And before you answer, I'll give you a little bit of think what's going on in Finland. I mean, as long as you're a small band or extreme metal band, well, media obviously doesn't give a fuck, and it's not like that is so much supported. But when things go big, like when Lordi, the Finnish metal rock band, was in Eurovision contest some 15 years ago, we had our prime minister do that. We even had this kind of Schlager music stars suddenly appearing in a kind of heavy metal costumes, and suddenly it was like a national thing, like, you know, as a Swedes, you know, ice hockey thing, you know, like, yeah, we won this metal contest, well, music contest, but with metal music. And obviously, even when those are gone and we have things like Nightwish, you know, that is on mainstream media. So in terms of metal music and media, yeah, things are nice when we can once again talk about money, much like gaming industry. But everything that is beyond, you know, mainstream, nobody gives a damn. But how it is in Sweden? Do you have more, say, healthy relationship with the media, or is it the same over there?
I think it's more accepted in sort of a general sense. I wouldn't specifically comment on the media because I wouldn't really know.
Actually, black metal bands has been played on TV.
But I think like extreme music has become more accepted, and that even like palatable to people that don't listen to it. You know, I get surprised when people that don't listen to metal sort of talk about the band and they've got like almost like a growl voice. You know, it's not singing, and they talk, oh, that I thought that was pretty cool. And there's also a lot of, I think there's a lot of pop references in media to metal bands. You'll read more sort of references in the papers from a journalist who will talk about a band or something like that. So I think in some respects it's definitely more accepted in Sweden now. That everybody, even my father now knows about these sort of big bands. You know, he'll talk about a band he's seen on TV like Slipknot. I mean, that would have been unheard of before. It doesn't mean he thinks they're good, but it's like it's seeped into the cultural consciousness of that this music exists. It's not something that nobody knows about anymore. You know, people will poke fun at it even. So it's like, you know, you could probably get away with being at a work conference and saying, here's my band, and then playing a death metal song. And people will think it's kind of cool. They might not like it, but they won't be like, what the fuck is all that about? They'll be like, yeah, okay, that's that black metal music they listen to these days. You know what I mean?
Metal.
So I think, the acceptance is definitely,
it's big here.
Yeah, I mean, there's festivals, they pop up and new festivals all the time. I mean, we talked about this the other day before this interview, because we were talking about what we might be asked and what we would talk about. But when I grew up listening to bands like Carcass and At the Gates, and I went to their shows in Glasgow, there would be like 50 people in the audience. And this was like 95, 94. And then these bands stopped in 95 and 94, I think. That was their last gigs. And then suddenly it's like 2008 and Carcass are back doing a reunion, and they're playing festivals and they're playing shows with 1,000 people, and At the Gates exactly the same thing. And you're thinking, what the fuck? Where were all these people when I was at gigs? And it's just that it becomes more accepted, and more people find extreme music. And in a way, it becomes less extreme. It becomes, because the acceptance, the extremity was that the music wasn't accepted. But now everyone is accepting it. And that's kind of why I don't consider myself a metal guy anymore. You know, I do my thing. I listen to the bands I listen to, but I'm not really part. I'm not out there. I'm not out there at shows anymore. I'm not listening to new bands. A few bands, but not a lot. I don't have the passion for the music like I had when I was a teenager.
That brings to me, if you don't mind jumping a little bit ahead, because once again, we have to stop at a certain point, but that leads to me to the question that nowadays it seems like, because the music isn't as extreme as it used to be anyways, and the gore and the violence and that kind of stuff, inverted crosses, they don't really scare nobody anymore. But it seems like these kind of extreme politics are brought into the game to, create this kind of a shock effect. Sometimes just for the image, but sometimes even with the real reason, like lyrical sense and all that stuff. Any thoughts about music getting politicized in the sake of being more extreme?
What do you mean by that? Some examples.
I mean, like bands that are flirting, for example, certain kind of forbidden topics, like, extreme politics. It can be extreme left or more likely extreme right, but also topics like there have been bands flirting with the idea of like pedophilia and something other that's sick. So how do you think about these ideas brought into the music just to, create an effect?
Personally, I think if you're doing extreme politics, you probably believe it. I don't really know anyone who would openly do a Nazi band and say, well, I'm only doing this for the art. I'm not sure, but I think that day's past when you do that for the shock. When you're a teenager, you may do a swastika or something on a school book or whatever. You're not a Nazi. But I think if you're flirting with extremity now, there's going to be so much criticism because we didn't have the internet back then. So you don't get this instant reaction, and you don't get cancelled. People will have an opinion. But now we're in this very, very dangerous situation where just speaking your mind, if it's the wrong thing to say, it's gonna have repercussions. It's gonna affect you negatively, and that could flow into your personal life as well. So it's very, very. I dislike it when I see bands like Watain or Marduk having to defend the fact that they write about war, they write about German tanks, they have imagery that's related to war or Nazism or whatever, but I don't believe that they're Nazis and that they have to defend some kind of ideology, because I think they're just using imagery. But I think if you're using extreme lyrics, I think that you need to sort of, if you're going to do that now, you have to kind of stand behind it and say that's what I believe, because otherwise people are just going to rip a new arsehole. And I think that's becoming worse because now we've got all this gender politics
in Sweden. At least.
Yeah, I mean it's getting out of control, and I know now people that they don't really want to say what they think. They just want to be quiet because if you say something about what you think, it can be construed as you're racist, you're anti. You're homophobic or whatever, you know, and it's a very, very dangerous time because, you know, anyone now can clip this interview and say, you know, they can take the first 5 seconds of me saying something about being a Nazi and say, oh, this is Adam Chapman, and there's no context anymore. So yeah, I think if you're using extremity now, the shock value is missing because people aren't shocked. They just want to be upset. They want to be outraged, and they want to point fingers. So yeah, I think if you do write about that kind of stuff, you're probably into it. I would never write about pedophilia. I mean, it's not even as a shock tactic. It's just I think that's too low.
Exactly.
You know. There's a fine line between fantasy and you know, Cannibal Corpse writing songs like "Fucked with a Knife" or whatever, entrails ripped through a virgin's cum. I mean, that's not. Yeah. That's funny, but it's like it's childish and it's done to sort of antagonize in a way that we can write these stupid things. But yeah, I mean, certain things are just taboo. Yeah. So no, we're never going to write about pedophilia.
No, I promise.
All right. Let's move to the lighter topics before we quit. Now, album is out. By the time this interview gets out, it's going to be out. But what are your plans for the future? When can we expect the next step in the Åskog anthology or era? What is the next step for the band?
The next step, we probably try to write some music probably right away if we have the inspiration. I mean, so let's see how long time it takes. I don't know, but I have already lyrics.
Yeah. I'm not a natural songwriter. It's very, very hard work for me to write songs and music. So I have these periods of like creativity and then longer periods of absolutely nothing. So, you know, it'll come when it comes. But one thing that we are determined with this band is that we do stuff together. So even if Lars is bringing music into the band, as long as it works for what I do as well, then he's, you know, I'm happy that he writes stuff. You had a few things for the album, but we just didn't feel that they worked because I was writing all the material and you weren't kind of in tune to what I was doing.
No.
And you have another way of composing. So we haven't really worked out how we can fit our music together, his parts and my parts. Maybe we'll try and do that. I want to try and broaden my skills a little bit for the next. You
learn my riffs and do it your way.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. But I also want to kind of develop as well. So for me, it's like I don't know what the next album will sound like. I don't think it will sound exactly like this album.
Probably not.
Maybe we talked about doing like an EP and doing it like as a live recording. And releasing it this way and trying new ideas. You know, it might work, it might not work, but this isn't a band that will stick to a tried and true formula. We'll experiment. I think like I said, this is for us. So if we enjoy what we're doing and we like the music, then that's what will get released.
Yeah.
All right. As the last question, if you had to give one track, like now let's expect and hope that now the audience is like, okay, I want to finally give this band a go. I just watched the interview and I still don't know what the music sounds like. Which track they should start with?
We get one each, yeah?
Yeah.
Or the same. I don't know if you're telepathic in that sense.
Yeah, my favorite track on the album is Winter. Yeah, I would listen to that. And if you can translate the lyrics, I think it's a really beautiful lyric and a beautiful song with a lot of emotions. And it progresses all the way to the end. I really love that song.
Yeah, for me, Winter is a little bit. It's a little bit of the odd one out on the album, actually, style-wise. It's a little bit more traditional. I'm really into the Teed, and I like the energy. I like the chorus vocals, and I think that's a good pop song almost, because it's kind of fits that sort of verse-chorus formula. But I think it's a really good song. Ironically, Winter has done the best with YouTube views, actually. So I don't know anything, obviously. I think really weird thing is that you have your favorites and you think people will also think they're the best, but it never works out the way you think it does.
It never works. All right, I think we shall conclude this session. This is going to be ultra long interview anyway, and I hope to hear from you guys in the future, maybe with the next recording or otherwise. If there is any regards or words to the wise you might want to add, now it's the time.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't have any wise words.
No.
Me neither. I'm just going to say, fuck fear, drink beer. Don't quote me on that. It's not mine. All right. Thank you, guys. And dear audience, this is Åskog. Go check out their latest album. Oh, one last question now comes to my mind. How to pronounce the album properly?
Varnader.
And there you have it. I did my best attempt in the review video, but I would give my attempt about 6 out of 10 if you get my drift. Anyway, dear audience, once again, take a look at the album, take a listen, and what can I say? I hope you enjoy it. Until our next time, take care and bye-bye.